The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a monument to cooperation and peace. Representatives from 400 species gathered here to decide the fate of trillions. The walls were made of crystal that sang when light touched them. The floor was carved from the heart of a dead star. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small. Park Do-yeon had stopped feeling small a long time ago. He walked through the massive doors with his back straight and his face calm. Behind him, his aide Kim Yuna carried a single datapad. That small device held the words that would change everything. Do-yeon had practiced his speech 100 times. He knew every pause, every emphasis, every carefully chosen word. But now, standing before the assembled representatives of the galaxy's greatest powers, he felt only peace. The Vellani High Minister sat in the center of the council chamber. His body was a mass of purple tentacles wrapped around a floating throne. His species had ruled half the galaxy for 10,000 years. They looked down on everyone, but they saved special contempt for humans. Ambassador Park, the High Minister said, his voice dripping with false welcome. We are pleased you could join us. The Council has important matters to discuss regarding human expansion limits.
Do-yeon
Smiled. The aliens never understood human smiles. They thought it meant happiness or agreement. They never learned that humans also smiled when they were about to do something dangerous. I'm not here to discuss expansion limits, Do-yeon said. His voice carried across the vast chamber without effort. Human engineers had designed the acoustics. Like everything else here, I am here to make an announcement. Representatives shifted in their seats. The Keth Consortium delegates, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms, whispered among themselves. The ancient Morith collective elders, so old their bodies had become more machine than flesh, watched with their glowing eyes. 300 years ago, Do-yeon began, humanity joined this council. We were young. We were eager. We believed in the promise of galactic civilization. We believed that if we worked hard enough, gave enough, contributed enough, we would earn our place among you. He paused and looked around the chamber. So many species, so many worlds, so much history, and humanity had touched all of it. We built your communication networks, he continued. When the Galactic War destroyed the old relay systems, human engineers designed new ones. Better ones. We asked for nothing in return, except friendship. The High Minister made a dismissive gesture with one tentacle. Ancient history. We are here to discuss current matters. I am discussing current matters, Do-yeon said, his voice harder now. We developed the medical treatments that saved the Morath elders from the wasting plague. We created the trade routes through the null corridors that make your economies possible. We kept the peace in the outer territories for 2 centuries. We gave and gave and gave. Yuna stepped forward and handed him the datapad. Her hands were steady. She had lost her brother in a Vellani labor camp. She had waited for this moment as long as anyone. And what did we receive? Do-yeon asked. The Vellani demanded tribute from human colonies. The Keth blocked human scientists from research committees. The Morith called us children unworthy of respect. Last year, this council voted to restrict human expansion to 12 systems. 12 systems for a species of 40 billion people. You are young, one of the Morith elders said. His voice crackled like old paper. You must earn greater privileges through time and service. We have served for 300 years, Do-yeon replied. How much longer must we wait? Another 300 years? 1,000. When will we have earned enough? Silence filled the chamber. No one had ever spoken to the council this way. Humans were supposed to be grateful, humble, eager to please. Enough of this, the High Minister snapped. You will accept the expansion limits and be thankful we allow you that much. Your species exists at our pleasure. Do-yeon laughed. It was not a kind sound. No, he said simply. We do not. He raised the datapad and read the words that would reshape the galaxy. By unanimous vote of the human parliament, Earth and all human colonies hereby withdraw from the Galactic Council. All treaties, agreements, and obligations are dissolved effective immediately. All human personnel serving in council positions are recalled. All human technology, infrastructure, and services are terminated. This decision is final and not subject to negotiation. For a long moment, no one moved. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Then the chamber erupted. The Villani High Minister rose from his throne, tentacles thrashing with rage. "You cannot do this. You are bound by treaty." "We are bound by nothing," Doyen said calmly. "We signed those treaties hoping for partnership. We received exploitation. The treaties are void." The Keth delegates were already frantically typing on their communication devices. The Morith elders sat frozen, their ancient minds struggling to process what they were hearing. "You will crawl back?" the High Minister snarled. "Within one cycle, you will come begging for our forgiveness. You need us. You need our protection, our markets, our approval." Doyen turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back at the assembled powers of the galaxy. "You are wrong," he said quietly. "We never needed you. You needed us. You just never bothered to notice." He walked out. The crystal doors sealed behind him. In the corridor, Yuna fell into step beside him. "It is done," she said, as Doyen agreed. "Now we see what happens." They walked in silence through the great station. Human engineers had built these corridors. Human workers had installed the lighting systems. Human programmers had written the code that controlled life support. Every step they took reminded them of how much humanity had given to this place. At the docking bay, a human transport waited. Captain Moon Sujin stood at the boarding ramp, her uniform crisp and her expression unreadable. "Ambassador," she said. "All human personnel have been notified. The evacuation is beginning." Doyen nodded. Across the galaxy, the same message was reaching every human worker, soldier, doctor, and engineer. "Come home. We are done." As the transport lifted off, Doyen watched the council station grow smaller through the window. It was beautiful, he had to admit. A monument to galactic civilization. But it was also a monument to inequality, to exploitation, to the belief that some species mattered more than others. "Do you think they understand?" Yuna asked, joining him at the window. "Not yet," Doyen said. "They think we are bluffing. They think we will come back when we realize how much we need them. And when they realize the truth?" Doyen thought about all the human hands that had built the galaxy's infrastructure. All the human minds that had solved its problems. All the human hearts that had hoped for acceptance and received only contempt. "Then they will learn what we learned long ago," he said. "That the ones who do the work are the ones with the power. They just have to be willing to stop." Behind them, the council station's lights flickered. Somewhere, a human technician had begun the shutdown sequence. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was only the beginning. The Meridian Relay Hub was the heart of galactic communication. Every message, every transaction, every piece of data that moved between star systems passed through this station. It was the most important piece of infrastructure in known space, and it was about to go dark. Chief Engineer Lee Suji stood in the main control room, watching her team pack equipment into transport containers. They moved with quiet efficiency, the kind that came from years of practice. These were the best engineers in the galaxy. They had kept the relay hub running for 2 centuries. Now they were taking it apart. "Cannot do this." The Villani station commander had been screaming for 3 hours. His purple tentacles slapped against the transparent barrier that separated him from the control room. Human security officers had sealed him out when he tried to interfere with the shutdown. Suji did not look at him. She was focused on her datapad, monitoring the careful sequence of disconnections. One wrong move could cause a cascade failure that would destroy the station. She had designed the failsafes herself. She knew exactly how to disable them. Chief Engineer, one of her technicians called, "Core matrix disconnection complete. Ready for primary shutdown?" "Proceed," Suji said. The lights in the control room flickered. Across 63 star systems, communication networks began to fail. The Villani commander's screams grew louder. But they seemed far away now. Suji thought about her first day on this station, 50 years ago. She had been young and excited, proud to serve the galactic community. The Villani officers had called her a monkey. They had laughed at her accent. They had taken credit for her innovations and blocked her promotions. She had stayed anyway. She had hoped things would change. They never did. "All human personnel report to evacuation ships," she announced over the station intercom. "Leave nothing behind." The shutdown took 6 hours. When it was complete, the Meridian Relay Hub was nothing but dead metal floating in space. The Villani could have it. They could not make it work. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out in the Keth Consortium's financial district. Director Hong Jisoo walked through empty offices that had buzzed with activity just days before. Human programmers had designed the trading algorithms. Human A&A. Lists had built the risk models. Human technicians had maintained the servers. Now they were gone, and the Keth were discovering a terrible truth. They did not understand their own financial systems. Encryption keys, a Keth official begged, following Jisoo through the corridors. "Just give us the encryption keys. We will pay anything." Jisoo kept walking. Her team had installed those encryption systems 30 years ago. The Keth had never asked how they worked. They had never wanted to learn. They had just expected humans to keep everything running forever. "The keys are proprietary human technology," she said. "They come with us. But our entire economy will collapse." Jisoo stopped and turned to face the official. She was small compared to the four-armed alien, but she did not feel small. "That sounds like a problem you should have considered before treating us like servants," she said. "Good luck." The medical centers of the Marath Collective, Dr. Choi Min-seo, oversaw the removal of life extension equipment. The Morith Elders were the oldest beings in the galaxy. Some had lived for 10,000 years. They had achieved this through a combination of ancient technology and human medicine. The ancient technology kept their bodies functional. The human medicine kept their minds intact. Without it, they would descend into senility within months. "Please," an elder named Vorthan said. His voice was weak, his glowing eyes dim. "We will give you anything. Territory, resources, power. Just do not take the treatments." Min-seo looked at the old creature. Vorthan had sat on the council for 800 years. He had voted against human membership in the Elder Sciences Council 17 times. He had called humans a temporary species that would burn out and disappear. "I spent 40 years developing these treatments," Min-seo said. "I asked for a single seat on the medical research board. You denied me because I was human." That was politics. "This is survival." "For us, it was always survival," Min-seo replied. "You just never cared." He sealed the last container of medical supplies and walked away. Behind him, Vorthan's cries echoed through the empty halls. The human evacuation was the largest movement of people in galactic history. 2 billion humans worked outside human space. Scientists, doctors, engineers, soldiers, teachers, builders. They had spread across the galaxy, filling every role that other species considered beneath them. Now, they were coming home, Captain. No Ji-hoon commanded one of the evacuation fleets. His ships traveled to remote outposts and forgotten stations, picking up human workers who had served for decades in isolation. Many of them cried when they boarded the transports. Some had never expected to see Earth again. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving distress calls from Villani colonies. They are requesting assistance with power grid failures." Ji-hoon looked at the messages scrolling across his screen. Dozens of Villani worlds were experiencing blackouts. Human engineers had designed their power systems. Human technicians had maintained them. No one had trained Villani replacements. "Log the requests and continue evacuation operations," Ji-hoon ordered. "Sir, some of these colonies have millions of inhabitants. Without power, they will face food shortages, medical emergencies." "I know," Ji-hoon said quietly, "but our orders are clear. Human lives first. We have been putting others first for 300 years. Now we put ourselves first." It was a hard decision. Ji-hoon had friends among the Villani. He had served with them, fought beside them, saved their lives, and had his life saved by them. But friendship was not the same as equality. The Villani had always treated humans as useful tools. Not as partners, The evacuation fleet jumped to faster than light speed, leaving the distress calls behind in the outer territories. Commander Beak Ji-woo led the last human peacekeeping force out of the buffer zone between Vellani and Keth space. For 200 years, human soldiers had kept the peace here. They had died by the thousands to prevent another great war. Now they were leaving, and the old enemies were already mobilizing. Commander, her second officer reported. Vellani and Keth fleets are gathering on opposite sides of the border. Intelligence suggests they will engage within days. Ji-woo looked at the tactical display. She had spent her entire career preventing this moment. She had lost friends, watched comrades die, sacrificed everything to maintain peace. It was never our war, she said finally. We just made it our burden, and now they can kill each other or learn to talk. Either way, it is not our problem anymore. The peacekeeping force jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, the first shots of a new war were already being fired. Back on Earth, the human parliament watched reports from across the galaxy. Communication networks collapsing. Economies failing. Wars erupting. Medical systems breaking down. Prime Minister Kwon Yaron stood before the assembled representatives. We knew this would happen, she said. We knew that when we left, things would fall apart. Some will say we are cruel for abandoning them. But we did not create their dependence on us. We simply stopped enabling it. The representative raised her hand. What about innocent civilians? Children who will suffer because of decisions made by their leaders. Yaron was silent for a long moment. This was the hardest part. The guilt that came with standing up for yourself when standing up meant others would fall. We will offer humanitarian aid to those who ask respectfully, she said. But we will not return to our old role. We will not be the galaxy's servants again. If they want our help, they will ask as equals or not at all. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would stand alone and across the galaxy. The great empires began to realize that they had made a terrible mistake. 2 weeks after humanity walked away, the galaxy was burning. The war between the Vellani Empire and the Keth Consortium had spread across 40 star systems. Without human peacekeepers to maintain the buffer zones, old hatreds exploded into violence. Fleets clashed in the darkness between stars. Worlds that had known peace for centuries now knew only fire. Admiral Shin Dong-wook watched the battle reports from his command ship safely within human space. He had spent 30 years fighting to prevent this war. He had lost friends, made sacrifices, given everything to keep the peace. Now he watched it all burn, and he felt nothing. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the Vellani have lost 7 cruisers in the Keth counterattack. They are requesting human military assistance under the old mutual defense treaties. Dong-wook almost laughed. We withdrew from those treaties. Send them our regards, and nothing else. Yes, sir. The irony was not lost on him. The Vellani had always looked down on human soldiers. They called them crude, primitive, lacking in proper military tradition. But when the Keth attacked, it was always human ships that held the line. Now the line was gone. In Vellani space, the situation was even worse. Power grids failed across dozens of worlds. Human engineers had designed systems that were efficient, reliable, and completely incomprehensible to anyone who had not helped build them. Governor Song Minji had been the last human administrator on the Vellani colony world of Praxis 7. She had served there for 20 years, managing infrastructure and coordinating services. The Vellani had never thanked her. They had barely acknowledged her existence. Now she sat in a transport ship, watching Praxis 7 shrink in the distance. The colony's lights were flickering. Soon they would go out entirely. The desalination plants will fail within a week, she said to no one in particular. After that, the water reserves will last maybe 2 months. Then 3 million people will start dying of thirst. You could go back, her assistant suggested. Help them restart the systems. And Ji shook her head. I offered to train Vellani technicians for years. They refused. They said it was human work beneath their dignity. Now they can learn dignity means nothing when you are dying of thirst. She turned away from the window. There was nothing more to see. the Morith Collective faced a different kind of crisis. Their elders, the ancient rulers who had guided their civilization for millennia, were dying. Not dying quickly like in battle, dying slowly like candles burning out. Without human medicine, their minds were fading. Memories of 10,000 years dissolving like morning mist. Elder Vorthon sat in his chamber, struggling to remember his own name. He had been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He had shaped the destinies of entire species. Now he could not remember what he had eaten for breakfast. The humans, he mumbled to his attendants. Bring me the humans. They can fix this. Humans are gone, Elder. They left 2 weeks ago. Vorthan blinked his fading eyes. Gone. Where did they go? Home. They went home, but who will maintain the treatments? Who will keep us alive? No one answered. There was no answer to give. Across the Morith worlds, the same scene repeated. Elders, who had lived for thousands of years, descending into confusion and fear. The younger generations watched helplessly. They had never been taught how the human technology worked. They had never wanted to learn in the Keth Consortium. The economic collapse was total. Director Yu Hejin had been the chief economist for the consortium's central bank. She had designed the algorithms that managed trillions of credits in daily transactions. She had created the risk models that kept the system stable. She had built the most sophisticated financial network in galactic history. Then she had deleted her access codes and walked away. Now the consortium's economy was in free fall. Currency values fluctuated wildly. Banks collapsed overnight. Savings vanished. The Keth had been one of the wealthiest civilizations in the galaxy. Within 2 weeks, they were facing poverty. They never wanted to understand, Hejin said during her debriefing on Earth. I offered to train Keth economists for decades. They refused. They said mathematics was human work. They preferred to focus on grander things. Grander things? The interviewer asked. Politics, philosophy, art, the things that matter to species who think they are superior. Smiled bitterly. Apparently being superior does not include understanding how your own economy works. Trade routes collapsed along with the economies. Human freighter captains had been the only ones willing to traverse the null corridors. Regions of space where strange energies made navigation nearly impossible. Other species considered the corridors too dangerous. Humans considered them a challenge. Captain. Han Jiang had run cargo through the null corridors for 30 years. She knew every safe passage, every dangerous pocket, every trick to surviving the journey. That knowledge existed only in her head and the heads of a few hundred other human captains. Now they were all gone. The corridors were impassable. Goods piled up in warehouses across the galaxy. Food rotted. Medicine expired. Raw materials sat unused. The great trade networks that connected hundreds of worlds simply stopped working. Giang received messages constantly. Offers of wealth. Promises of power. Desperate pleas for help. She deleted them all. My grandmother died in a Villani labor camp, she told her crew as they traveled home. My father was denied medical treatment because humans were low priority. I spent my entire career serving species that considered me barely above an animal. Now they want my help? What will you tell them? Her first officer asked. Nothing. That is the point. For 300 years, we answered every call. We helped everyone who asked. We gave until we had nothing left to give, and they took it all for granted. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, civilizations were collapsing. Billions were suffering. Wars were spreading. Now we give them nothing, she said, and they finally understand what we were worth. On Earth, the mood was strange. There was grief for the suffering happening across the galaxy. There was guilt for walking away. But there was also something else. Something that humanity had not felt in a very long time. Pride, Professor. Kong Nari opened the first human history school in 3 centuries. For generations, human children had learned a sanitized version of their past, approved by the Council. They learned that humans were young, inexperienced, lucky to be included in galactic civilization. Now they would learn the truth. We did not stumble into space, Nari told her first class. We built our way there. We did not beg for a place in the galaxy. We earned it with blood and sweat and sacrifice. And when the galaxy forgot our value, we reminded them. The children listened with wide eyes. They had never heard their history told this way. Remember this, Nari continued. We are not better than other species. We are not worse. We are equal. That is all we ever wanted. And now, finally, we will have it. Outside the school, construction crews were building new homes, new factories, new research facilities. For the first time in centuries, humanity was building for itself and across the galaxy. The great powers watched in horror as everything they had built on human foundations crumbled to dust. 1 month after the withdrawal, the delegations began arriving. Chancellor Yoon Tae stood in the reception hall of Horizon Station, humanity's new capital in deep space. The station was entirely human-built, designed and constructed in secret over 50 years. It was a symbol of what humanity could do when it worked for itself. Now it was also the place where the great powers of the galaxy came to beg. The Villani delegation arrived first. Hi, Minister Thiessen, the same official who had dismissed humanity just weeks ago, walked through the gleaming corridors with his tentacles dragging on the floor. The arrogance was gone from his posture. Only desperation remained. Chancellor Yoon, he said, his voice cracking, the Villani Empire formally requests the return of human technical personnel. We offer full citizenship rights, permanent seats on the council, territorial concessions in the outer systems. Teehee listened with a calm expression. She had practiced this moment many times. You offer these things now, she said. Where were they 300 years ago? Where were they when we first asked for equal treatment? The situation was different then. Situation was exactly the same. We were doing the work. You were taking the credit. The only difference is that now you understand you needed us. The San's tentacles writhed with frustration. What do you want? Name your price, anything. Teehee leaned forward. We want nothing from you. That is what you fail to understand. We did not leave to get a better deal. We left because we were done being used. There is no offer you can make that will change that. Millions are dying, Thiessen said. Your people have the knowledge to save them. Your people had 300 years to learn that knowledge. You chose not to. That was your decision. These are the consequences. The Villani delegation left empty-handed. The Keth came next. Their representatives were thin and pale, showing signs of the economic collapse ravaging their worlds. They did not make offers or demands. They simply pleaded. Our children are starving, the lead delegate said. Our hospitals have no power. Our cities are dark. We have nothing left to trade, nothing left to offer. We only ask for mercy. Foreign Minister On Sun Woo handled this meeting. She was known for her cold efficiency, but even she felt the weight of the moment. We are not monsters, she said carefully. Humanitarian aid will be considered for civilizations that request it properly, but there will be conditions. Anything. First, you will acknowledge publicly that your prosperity was built on human labor. Second, you will reform your laws to ensure no species is ever treated as humans were treated. Third, you will teach your children the truth about what happened here. The Keth delegate hesitated. Admitting fault was difficult for a species that had spent millennia believing itself superior. If we agree to these terms, you will help us. We will consider helping you. There are no guarantees. You are not entitled to our aid simply because you need it. The Keth delegation left to consult with their government. The decision was not easy. But starvation made even proud species humble. The Moreth Collective sent their most respected elder, being named Koreth, who had lived for 9,000 years. He was the oldest surviving Moreth, and his mind was fading fast. He had perhaps weeks before he lost himself entirely. Koreth did something no Morath had ever done. He knelt before a human. We were wrong, he said, his ancient voice barely a whisper. For centuries, we called you children. We denied you respect. We treated your contributions as insignificant. We were wrong. Teehee looked down at the kneeling elder. This creature had been making decisions when humanity was still learning to farm. He had watched civilizations rise and fall, and now he knelt before a species he had dismissed as temporary. "Rise," she said. "We do not need you to kneel. We never wanted submission. We only wanted to be seen as equals." Korath struggled to his feet. "And now? Will you help us?" "Perhaps. But first you must understand something. We are not refusing to help you because we hate you. We are refusing because you never learned to help yourselves. If we return now, nothing will change. You will use us until we are exhausted, then wonder why we leave again. Then what must we do? Learn, grow, become capable of maintaining your own civilization without depending on others to do the work you consider beneath you. Then, perhaps we can be partners." It was not the answer Korath wanted, but it was the only answer Teehee could give, while the delegations came and went. Humanity was building something new. Scientist Oyunbi led a research team on the edge of human space. For the first time in centuries, human scientists could pursue their own interests without council approval. The results were astounding. "We always held back," Yunbi told her team as they reviewed their latest findings. "We shared our discoveries with the council, and they classified them, restricted them, buried them. Now we can finally work freely." In 3 weeks, her team had made more progress than in the previous 3 years. New energy systems, advanced medical treatments, communication methods that did not require relay stations. Humanity had always been capable of these things. They had just never been allowed to develop them. Artist Shin Hyun organized the first purely human cultural festival since the council era began. For too long, human art had been dismissed as primitive. Human music as noise, human stories as childish fantasies. Now human creativity exploded across Horizon Station. Paintings that captured the beauty of Earth, music that spoke to the human soul, stories that celebrated human resilience and hope. "We forgot who we were," Hyunwoo said in his opening speech. "We spent so long trying to fit into their idea of civilization that we lost our own. Now we remember." The festival lasted for 10 days. Millions watched from human colonies across the 12 systems. Many cried, many laughed. All of them felt something they had not felt in generations. They felt human. Back in council space, the situation continued to deteriorate. The Galactic War had spread to 70 systems. Both sides were losing badly, but neither would stop. Without human diplomats to negotiate truces, without human peacekeepers to enforce borders, the ancient hatred had nowhere to go but deeper into violence. The Morath elders continued to fade. Some had already died, their ancient minds finally giving out. Others lingered in confusion, forgetting everything they had known, everything they had been. Economies collapsed. Trade routes stayed closed. Technologies failed. The great galactic civilization that had seemed so permanent was revealed as fragile, held together by the work of a species it had never respected. On Horizon Station, Teehee addressed the human parliament. "They are suffering," she said. "I do not take pleasure in their pain. Many of them are innocent. Many of them never chose how their governments treated us. But we cannot return to the old ways. If we save them now, without conditions, without change, we become their servants again. Then what do?" A representative asked. "We wait. We build. We become strong enough that when we do engage with the galaxy again, it will be as equals or not at all. And we hope that they learn from this experience." "What if they don't learn?" Teehee was silent for a long moment. "Then they will fall, and we will remain. That is the lesson they must understand. We were never the weak ones. We were never the ones who needed them. They needed us. And now, they finally know it." Outside the Parliament chamber, Horizon Station hummed with activity. Human children played in parks designed by human architects. Human workers built homes using human technology. Human artists created beauty that spoke to human hearts. It was a small beginning. 12 systems against a galaxy of thousands. But it was a beginning built on a foundation of self-respect. And sometimes, that was enough. 3 months after the withdrawal, the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral Seo Junhoyak stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Pride, the first true human warship, not a peacekeeping vessel designed to protect others, not a defensive platform meant to shield alien colonies, a warship built for humanity, by humanity, to protect humanity. Behind him, a fleet of 300 ships held formation. Each one was a marvel of engineering, incorporating decades of suppressed human technology. These ships were faster, stronger, more advanced than anything the Council had ever seen because humans had always been capable of building them. They had just never been allowed to. Fleet status report, Jinhawk ordered. All ships operational, Admiral. We are ready for the demonstration. Junhyuk nodded. Today was important. The remaining Council powers had requested a meeting, and the human parliament had agreed. But this time, humanity would negotiate from strength, not weakness. The demonstration began for 2 hours. The human fleet performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. Ships jumped in and out of faster-than-light speed with precision that defied known physics. Weapon systems targeted asteroids at distances that Villani sensors could not even detect. Defensive shields absorbed energy that would have vaporized Council warships, watching from a safe distance. The Council representatives sat in stunned silence. "This is impossible," the Villani military commander whispered. "They could not have developed this technology in 3 months." "They did not," his aide replied. "They had it all along. They just never showed us." That was the truth. For 300 years, humanity had hidden its true capabilities. Not out of fear, but out of hope. They had hoped that if they seemed less threatening, more useful, more willing to serve, the Council would eventually accept them as equals. That hope was dead now, and humanity no longer needed to hide. The meeting took place on Horizon Station. This time, the Council representatives were led to a simple conference room, not a grand hall. They were offered chairs that were comfortable for human bodies, not alien ones. Small details, but important ones. Chancellor Yoon Tae-hee sat at the head of the table. Beside her was Vice Admiral Im Hae-hoon, Admiral Jun Hyuk, and Foreign Minister An Sun-hoo, the leadership of a new humanity. Across from them sat what remained of the Council's power. The Villani High Minister, weakened by war, the Keth Premier, humbled by economic collapse, and a young Morith named Vesha, one of the few whose mind had not yet faded. "Thank you for coming," Tae-hee began. "We have much to discuss." The Villani High Minister leaned forward. "Chancellor, the galaxy is dying. The war between our peoples has killed billions. The economy is in ruins. Ancient wisdom is being lost forever. We need your help," Tae-hee said simply. "The question is why we should give it. Because you are the only ones who can save us." Vice Admiral Hae-hoon spoke for the first time. "That is the problem. You see us only as saviors. Tools to fix your mistakes. But we are not tools. We are people." Young Morith, the Shah, raised her hand. Unlike the ancient elders, she had grown up working alongside humans. She understood them better than most of her species. "May I speak?" Tae-hee nodded. "I was raised by human caretakers," Thesha said. "They taught me to read, to think, to question. The elders said these were human weaknesses, but they were wrong. These were human strengths." She looked at each Council representative in turn. "I have asked myself why humanity stayed so long when you were so clearly mistreated. Why you kept helping when you received nothing in return. Why you hoped for acceptance when it never came. And what answer did you find?" Hae-hoon asked. "You hoped because you believed in us. You believed that we could be better than we were. You gave us chance after chance to see your value, and we failed every single time." Silence filled the room. "You did not leave because you hate us," Thesha continued. "You left because you finally stopped hoping we would change. That is the saddest part. Not that you left, but that we made you stop believing in us." Tae-hee felt something shift in the room. This was not the usual Council arrogance. This was something new. "Why are you telling us this?" she asked. "Because I want you to hope again," Thesha said. "Not now. Not immediately. But someday. I want humanity to believe that we can learn from this mistake, that we can become the partners you always deserved. That is a beautiful sentiment, Foreign Minister Sun Wu said. But sentiment does not rebuild economies or end wars. No, but it is a beginning. The Shay reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystal. This is the Moroth Memory Stone. It contains the recorded history of our species, going back 20,000 years. I am giving it to humanity as a gift. The council representatives gasped. The Memory Stone was the most precious artifact the Moroth possessed. It was never shared with outsiders. Why? Teehee asked. Because you taught us medicine that saved our elders for centuries. Because your engineers built systems we never appreciated. Because your soldiers died protecting borders that were not your own. This is not payment. It is acknowledgement. You mattered. You always mattered. We were just too blind to see it. She placed the crystal on the table and stepped back. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Teehee reached out and took the crystal. We will consider your words, she said. But consideration is not agreement. There will be conditions. There will be changes. The old relationship is dead. Whatever comes next must be different. We understand, the Villani High Minister said. He looked older than he had 3 months ago. Defeat had aged him. We ask only for the chance to prove we can change. The negotiations lasted for weeks. They were difficult, painful, and often frustrating. Old habits died hard. The council representatives sometimes slipped back into their old arrogance. Human representatives sometimes let their anger override their judgment. But slowly, carefully, something new began to take shape. Humanitarian aid flowed to the most desperate areas. Human doctors returned to treat the sick, but they trained local assistants who would eventually replace them. Human engineers helped restore power systems, but they taught alien technicians how to maintain them. Human peacekeepers returned to the war zones, but this time with full authority to enforce their decisions. It was not perfect. It was not fast. People still suffered. Wars still raged. Economies still struggled, but it was different. On Earth, Park Do-yan watched the news reports from his retirement home. 3 months ago, he had delivered the speech that changed everything. Now he watched the consequences unfold. His daughter, a young diplomat named Park Ye-jin, visited him often. She was part of the new generation, the ones who would build the future. Do you think we did the right thing? She asked during one visit. Do-yan thought about it for a long time. I think we did the necessary thing, he said finally. Right and wrong are complicated, but sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even if it hurts, even if it causes suffering. Because if you don't, the suffering never ends. It just becomes invisible. The council says they want to change. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Time will tell. But this time, we negotiate as equals. This time, we decide how much to give and what to expect in return. That is all we ever wanted. Eugene looked out the window at the blue sky of Earth. Somewhere up there, humanity was building a new civilization. One based on self-respect instead of service. One where being human was not a limitation but a source of pride. What happens now? She asked. Do-yan smiled. It was a human smile, full of complexity that aliens never quite understood.